don't put so much importance on what others think of you. I think that just like I was at times, I was very concerned with kind of criticism and comparing myself to others or putting on masks, right? Oh, I'm in this environment. This is how all the other people are behaving. I need to behave like that. Um, and I think that one, I should have, like, there are moments where I think back and I'm like, I could have been happier or could have enjoyed more if I was a little bit more authentic in that situation. Um, but some of these things, I think that if I look back, I may have done them with the intention of, okay, this will make me more successful in my career, in my relationships, etc. Um, and not being authentic was actually making me, you know, trip over and failing at things. So I think that would be one, to just like, hey, be authentic and don't put so much weight on what you hear, what others are saying.
Welcome everyone back to the Sean Trace Show. I am Sean Trace, and I have a really awesome guest with us today. Now, would you like to tell people a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Hugo Breton, and I help uh, individual computers make the leap to be people managers, mostly in the video games and tech industry. And I help them so that they can have the vision, the clarity of vision to share with their team, the confidence and systems so that they can scale from being that high performing individual contributor to now leading an entire team.
I love that. I was talking to someone on one of my other podcasts about an activity that I had when I was younger. It was interesting because we had a professor, or teacher, professor is way before that. We had a teacher come in and he gave us a bunch of Legos. And we took the Legos and he gave four people a bunch of Legos and we all started building something. And we all started building our own part of a house. And then after about 45 minutes, we came together and he says, okay, put your house together. And it was wild because it didn't fit. It didn't work. And, we all had our own extravagant parts of the house. And when we brought them together, they didn't really sync so well. And so the
Okay.
professor said, okay, go back to your groups. And I want you now to figure out, start over, take apart what you did. You can keep the idea, but, take it apart and make it work. Come in and build something together that has the same unified vision. And when we did that, we were able to kind of coordinate better, create better. We all still had our own ideas. We all still had our own individuality. We all still wanted our own flair, you know. Um, but yet we were able to kind of work together in a way that wasn't the same as before. And one of the things that struck me is how when you have teams and everyone can be a great achiever on their own. Everyone can, knock things out of the ballpark. Everyone can build amazing systems or amazing things by themselves. But doing it with a team is a whole other thing. It's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And um, I can definitely see the activity that you shared, how it would work. And and many times, what happens is a new manager is promoted because they're high performing individual contributors. They're doing great things on their own, as you're saying, not just the output, but maybe they have great systems of how they get things done, right? They
Yeah.
have great quality standards. And as new managers, they start stumbling with maybe the same things that made them absolutely great individual contributors.
Yeah.
Um, they think that they need to do everything, right? They need to pick up the slack of the team.
Yeah.
That the quality standards they have to be exactly as the ones that they had when they were working on their own. Um, and their systems. They try to use the same systems that they had before, but they're not considering that the systems have to be different if they're now working with a team, right? Um, so yes, one thing that managers sometimes becomes a blind spot is you're working with other team members, and other team members that have different quality standards, different skills, different strengths, and different personalities. And to manage those personalities, to make them gel, it's just like your Lego activity, right? So just like those pieces needed to fit,
Yeah.
you need to be the gel that brings that team together, understanding the different personalities and the strengths of the team. So yeah, it becomes a whole different game, and can be very frustrating for someone who had a stellar career as an individual contributor and is now struggling with all of these things, when leading the team.
It's interesting too because you're right. Like the individual can be, the absolute rock star, and there is this assumption that if you have, and I mean, we see this in sports all the time. Like sports, we see this all the time where a team is like, we are going to draft this star player. We are going to put them onto this team and they are going to lead us to greatness. And sometimes that person is not even a leader. Sometimes that's one of the challenges as well. That person is not a leader. They're an individual contributor who is maybe a better follower or a better, like, kind of a journeyman. Like they just can kind of plug them in to do great things, but they're still part of a team. But they still need to have a part of the team. They still need to have someone that can lead. And one of the things that I think is interesting is because there's a couple of things that I think about. First of all, the person who's doing that has to be able to have a level of awareness of what's going on around them. That sometimes some of those rock stars don't always have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not that they don't have it initially; they can learn it because it's definitely these are skills that can be learned. But I remember once that we had this leader on one of the teams I was a part of, and that person was a great person, great guy. But when he was kind of thrust into the elevated position of power, like the coach was like, "This guy's the new team captain," and he faltered because he did not have a communication style that worked for the rest of the team. And the coach mid-season made a shift, and he's like, "All right, we are changing up the team captain." The guy was dejected and not so happy. But what happened is he put in the quiet um, grind guy, the guy who just showed up early for practice, went home late, um, didn't complain, like was work had this serious work ethic, and was just like the guy that you went to with a problem, then you're like, "Hey, I got this problem." He's like, "We'll get it fixed. We will get it fixed. Not you'll get it fixed, not he'll get it done." But he would always find a way to help his friends get through that problem. And what happened is we started winning. We started performing better and the team started like crushing it because there was a person who understood how to get things done and how to lead. The other guy then stepped in line and he became an even better performer because suddenly he had the systems around him that allowed him to succeed as well. And became later seasons he became a better leader because he had this mentorship under not the coach but this other leader that kind of shaped him.
Yeah. I love this story because it shows how, by putting the right systems and managing the team the right way, it not only leads to results, but it becomes an enabler for those star performers to really
Yeah.
bring their best. I like that you mentioned a couple of critical things. One, communication, which sounds pretty simple, but is one of the key elements of bringing the team together, right? And understanding how to communicate to the entire team, but also make it effective with individuals, right? Because
Yeah.
if I'm sure if that new captain was talking to the rock star the communication needed to be different than when talking to someone who was maybe a little bit more quiet or shy, right? And great leaders, that's what they do. They adapt their they know how to do broadcast communications that are effective, and by structuring the messages and doing great storytelling, but they can also adapt to um, each team member to their style, right? I remember, this is not a management story, but it illustrates a point. At some point, I moved into a condo and it had a gym, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start, exercising every single day. And there was a trainer there, and having never gone to a gym to work out, do strength training, it was very intimidating. But this guy, Gustavo, he was fantastic because he knew how to adapt to each single person. So there was
That's
someone who was like very alpha, like, training like he would train like 2 or 3 times a day. And the style that the coach had with him was very aggressive and shouting and everything. And I would look at it from a distance, and I would be like, oh no, like this is even more intimidating.
right.
But when he would come to me, like his style would be completely different, right? And he would go
Mhm.
back to basics, and he would say, "Hey, let's look into your form." Um, so again, a very different communication, but that made it inviting for me to say, "Hey, this is great! Like I've never had a trainer, and this is fantastic because he really understands me, and he's pushing me, but in such a way that's also making me come back tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
More excited. And that's what great managers and leaders do. They adapt that communication so it's effective, for the team, but also for the individuals.
That's awesome. Well, that leads to the question of like, and I mean, and this seems simple, but what does it actually mean to be a good leader? Like, what does it mean? What does it take to be a good leader?
Yeah. And I think we've been talking about two things because I do think that leadership and management, they're a little bit different.
So true.
Management, I feel it's more mechanic. So it's more about installing systems. It's
Yeah.
more about understanding you know the team members within the team, almost as if they were pieces in a machinery,
Hmm.
and then setting the systems and saying, "Hey, this is how we have effective meetings. These are the rules for the game, like our team norms. This is how we're going to have effective one-to-ones, etc." So it's all about like setting up a system and then just managing the system, right? So
Yeah.
whereas leadership, I do think that it starts from management, but then it's a lot about providing a vision and motivating people. So it has more of a human side of really connecting with others and bringing that inspiration, and setting that direction and saying, "Hey, team, this is where we're going," right? And setting that north star. And making it infectious for the whole team, so that the team is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna follow this leader because wherever they lead us."
I love that. I love the idea of a person who kind of sets the North Star because you think about like explorers of old. My daughter and I were doing history, and we live in Vietnam. So, I'm sitting there working with her on schoolwork. And one of the things I realized is I wanted to supplement because her Vietnamese education is actually great. We sent her to a local school, and I'm going to praise that school. They do an exceptional job of what they do. They teach her not always the way I like. Some of the way they do the math is different. And then I'm just like, you know what? But she's still learning and she's doing great. But there were certain things that I didn't like. And so I just wanted to get her into a more multicultural perspective. So I also enrolled her in an Australian, like a homeschool program. We're not homeschooling, but it's just extra curriculum that when we want to have extra stuff, we study it. And one of the things that was interesting is when we got her into the history stuff, we were looking at explorers and talking about what explorers did and how people of different countries, whether it be from Europe or whether they were explorers from Asia or explorers from wherever. We looked at one like explorer from China that sailed all the way to Africa. And at a time in a type of boat that they were like, yeah, that boat couldn't do it, and it did. And then you looked at the Vikings that came across the Atlantic in these tiny little like Viking boats that were bigger than we thought, but still crossing the North Atlantic in a rowboat. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
and like you have to have, and there was a leader of some sort who was like sitting there looking at these people that said, we are sailing into the unknown. We are sailing into what could be, our own demise, but I am going to lead you there. And the people sitting there going, you know what? I don't know about this mission, but what I do know about is Lars or Sven or whatever that person's name was that they looked up to, and go, I trust that guy. And I've been there on teams that were like that. I've been there with companies where, man, I don't know if this is the right thing. I got to work on some big movies early in my media career, and when I was watching some of the things that some of these big directors were doing, I was sitting there going, well, I don't know about this. This is kind of like, wow, this is intense. We're filming in here. Like, we're filming in this giant sound stage. And they're like, yeah, they're going to turn this is going to be like, they're going to, in the next couple days, they're going to turn this to the interior of the Vatican because we can't actually film in the Vatican. So they're going to film it here. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And then suddenly we get on set and like a couple days later, and it has been transformed into the interior of the Vatican. And it's wild. And that trust that you have to that person that they're going to get you there is huge. And so I love what you're saying. You have to have some ability to communicate, and you have the ability to lead them, because it's not management. A manager can just tell you what to do,
Yeah.
but you might be looking for a new job in a couple days because you're not really inspired to follow them.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about those explorers or great leaders that you and I may have worked with, um, there's always that vision, right? That
Yeah.
gets you excited. And the ones that do it really well, they paint it very vividly, right? So they
Yeah.
say, hey, wait, um, this is the land we're looking for. This is what we're gonna find there, etc. Right? And they paint this very detailed picture that gets you excited. And the other thing is there's always a purpose. There's always a why, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like okay, but why are we going there, right? So there
Right.
has to be a compelling purpose. And just when you were saying about, you know, looking for a job after a few days, um, that's something that you also see when you're in a job and there's not a clear purpose and you don't see the impact of what you're doing. You're like, well, why am I working so hard here when I could be doing something that makes more of a difference? And and I think we'll see more of that because the younger generations really have that in them of saying, hey, I'm willing to compromise other things as long as I know that I'm working for a purpose that really connects with me.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think that as you're saying, leadership has always been important, but I think it's going to become even more critical in the next few years to really find that purpose and communicate it clearly to the teams, so to inspire the younger generations that are really craving for that purpose and for that knowledge of the work that I'm doing has a big impact in the world,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's huge. And I think that the younger generation is looking for that in a big way because, some of the past generations were like, oh, I'll put up with it. And they did. And they put up with it, but they weren't like happy. And I think this newer generation has a lot of permission to make change because they're like, you know what? They actually understand something that hopefully everyone understands. Life is too short to put up with an awful situation. Like, you don't need to stick with something. But, being the leader for my own company and for my own team, and one of the things that I do is like I know the good things that some of the good things I'm supposed to do. I try to have really good communication. I try to make sure everyone feels safe. at the end of the day, I want to make people to feel really safe. And some of the ways I do that is with humor, lighten the energy when things get heavy. It brings some laughter in, and it tends to work for me. But that's the thing that I do with my team. And I understand, though, as well, that certain team members don't want that. Certain team members want to keep it focused. Certain team members want to focus in on the project. But I also am very much aware of when I make mistakes, and there have been some mistakes that I made in running my team that I sit there and I look back and go, yeah, that was probably not the best choice. And it depends on the situation what that was, but I want to ask you this. What's one mistake that most new leaders make that they can really, start looking for and figuring out a way to not do that?
Earlier, like one is just like trying to do everything, right? And trying to pick up the slack for the team, right? Which turns into not delegating enough, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that I went through that, right? I was again trying to hold certain quality standards and saying no, and even saying, just going to what you just shared, I'm keeping my team safe if I take on, more of the workload, because then they can go home a little bit earlier than I do, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I was doing that and not delegating enough, and um, and and the partner in that project came over and said, "Hey, what's going on?" I shared, "Yeah, I'm finishing this." Challenged me on why I wasn't delegating, and said, "Hey, you do realize that every time you don't delegate, you're robbing development opportunities, from your team, right? You're
Oh,
stopping them, their learning process, because they you already learn how to do that,
yeah.
and you're now robbing that opportunity for them to learn that." And it was an instant switch for me of saying, "Oh, okay." I thought I was protecting them. I thought I was keeping them safe. And now I realize that, you know, here I'm thinking that I'm making them safer, and I'm actually damaging them, and damaging in a
Yeah.
way that was very important for me. Because for me, the moment I stepped into that role, I was like, I'm gonna be the best manager ever, the best leader, and I'm gonna, help my team grow. So it was a big aha moment. So I think that's one. But you made me think of another one, because we talked about trust a couple times now, and a big thing that someone in a leadership position needs to do is to gain the trust of the team.
Yeah.
And if we start like breaking down what makes trust, I think a very critical component that's there, and sometimes it's difficult for new managers, is authenticity, right?
Yeah.
because because maybe in the mind of a new manager, it's like, oh, now I'm the manager, now I'm the boss, right? I need to behave differently. And this is where managers in general, they suffer from a lot of imposter syndrome, because they just come from, oh, I was the person doing that job, and now I'm managing a team of people doing that job, right? So there's kind of this mindset, um, and it damages the authenticity, because it's like, oh, my team can see me fail, right? So I need to make sure that they don't see failure in me, that I put on this mask and I act as the manager, right?
Right.
Whereas once they go past that, they can realize that being authentic, can be so much more powerful in the eyes of the team, right? Sometimes saying, hey, um, and I do remember, like I feel that in working with several clients, um, like a lot of time, I remember one client saying, hey, I need to, I messed up with this, but I can't show it to my team. And we went through why, and what were the details. But through the session, we had this a conversation along these lines, and he realized, no, yeah, I need to go back to my team and say, hey, I messed up with this. What would you guys do, right? And the next time we met, he said that was a major shift. I was very nervous before saying that, but after that, it became a very collaborative session. And I do think that I came out of that meeting with more respect for my team. So he was like really happy to just go back into that moment of more authenticity. So
I love that. And one of the two couple of things there is like, um, there is this idea, and you get some of these high performers that are like, I can do everything myself. It's so much easier if I do it myself. I know it's going to be done right. And, but yet then when they, again, like they take away the opportunity from the people that develop under them, but also there is not the possibility of scaling. Like maybe, all right, sure, maybe you can do that with a team of three. Maybe you can do that with a team of five. But when you suddenly have a team of 1,000 people under you, there is no way that you can do everything. I mean, you imagine a general in the battle. If that guy's leaving, he's a small platoon leader and he's leading 10 guys. All right, yeah, he can charge the beach, he can do this, whatever. But the second that that person is the leader of 1,000 people, at that point in time, she shouldn't be, whoever that might be, shouldn't be challenging the beach or charging the beach. They should be the one sitting back there and going, we need a strategy. We need to figure out what we're going to do, or we're going to have a big, big problem. And it's also, I love that what you're saying about trusting the team. As I've been developing my team, there have been editors and, creators that I trained that do things very differently than I train them or differently than I would do. And I sat there initially and I was like, what is this? Why are we doing it this way? But then when I watched the results, it was better than what I had put together. It was better than the structures I had put into place. And so at some point in time, they took things and they evolved, and it moved beyond where I had seen it possibly being. And that's beautiful too, because I had to sit there and go, you know what? Starting to introduce things for feedback, going, guys, you guys are all really smart. What other things have you figured out? And that would took some trust on my part, to
yeah,
check my ego and to sit there and go, you know what? These are some smart individuals that have great ideas and they can help make our process better. But I have to be willing to check my ego, step back and sit there and go, what are we doing here? And what are you guys learning in the process that I can learn from you?
yeah, yeah. I think it's creating that space for the team to show what they can do, right? To understand their
Yeah.
strengths, and as you say, to be open that what they do could be better, could be different, right?
Yeah. Right.
As you were sharing your example with the editing, I was thinking, like, because when I became a man, it was all about spreadsheets, right? So I
Yeah.
remember, like, my spreadsheets look beautiful, right? So a lot of my block there was like, oh, my team spreadsheets need to look this beautiful, right? And I think when I let go, just like your example, then I realized, oh, this person's spreadsheet, they definitely don't look as beautiful as mine, but this person loves like making them simpler and automating things,
Mm,
right? And putting buttons that
right.
make using them much better. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And maybe I know how to do it, but I'm just very lazy. Like it's not something that inspires me. But this person is doing a fantastic job. So probably, um, in many cases, it's better the quality. But it also takes you in different directions where you're like, oh, as a team, now we can do something different, right?
Yeah.
And in particular, when you're, like in your case or video games, that you're in a creative team, having that possibility of going in different directions adds so much
Yeah.
to the process, right?
Right. Yeah. Because it's like when I think about it, you hand a team a recipe to bake a cake. You hand them all the ingredients. The reality is, we can follow the recipe exactly, and we know what we're going to get. And that's important to be able to deliver a product again and again and again. You need to be able to have a standard of, a standard. But one of the interesting things is that inside of that menu that you're imparting, there's a million different ways to do it. Maybe you crack the eggs this way. Maybe you add the eggs to the bowl first and put the flour on top. Maybe you put the flour on the bowl and put the eggs on top. And each one could have its own thing. And if you have created a space of trust where your team members all feel safe speaking up and challenging other people and throwing their ideas out there and knowing that they're not going to get shot down, they're not going to get absolutely shut down, then you create this space where everyone can learn. And like I think that's where something for me, I for many years as a side hustle, I would teach English to kids while living overseas. And one of the things that was interesting for me is at the end of the day, to create a learning environment, as teacher at the end of the day is a good leader. A good teacher is a good leader, you know? And you are creating a learning environment that is a safe place that people can share their ideas. And like what I brought into my team building was that same level of, well, whatever we're doing, can you be open enough to learn from the people around you? Can you be open enough to have good communication so that you can even be aware that you need to learn, you know? And it's just, it's always fascinating too that there's so much that can be done and there's so many ways to do it. And I found that I had to, again, check my ego at the door to be able to be a good leader and to see that maybe my way wasn't the only way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it goes back to the point you said earlier about awareness, right? So, great leaders have that awareness of their environment, of themselves, of others. And I love the idea of, checking your ego at the door. There's a big role for leaders is to elevate others, right? And to recognize,
Yes.
hey, you're a rock star. Going back to your example of the team, right? And saying, hey, I'm the captain, but I'm gonna create the conditions so that as a rock star, you hit the goals, right? Uh, you shine on the field, and that requires kind of letting your ego on the side, right? In the best environments I've been in, the the leader is not stepping into the spotlight, but rather
Mm,
getting others to step into the spotlight and saying, "Hey, look at what Sean did," right?
yeah.
And um, yeah, and it goes back to that getting rid of the ego, creating that awareness, and saying, "Hey, we're here to succeed as a team, and as a leader, I want to recognize who's bringing that value." Um, and the way that I step into the spotlight is by letting others do it. So
Yeah. I love that too because you have to again see what other people are bringing and then being perceptive. And one of the things for me too that really made a big shift for me was um, understanding a couple things. First of all, was my own limits, and there are only so many hours in the day. Like I it is bright and early in the morning. I woke up early to get this podcast done because I am really excited about this conversation and I really enjoy hearing and talking about leadership. It's 5 in my morning and I was up till 2. And because I did not know that my wife was going to have an event. She's like, "Hey, can you come with me to this event that I'm shooting?" I was like, "Sure, I'd love to." Because I love going along with her, filming and helping support her. And I'm sitting there and I didn't tell her that I had a 5 a.m. podcast. And I just was like looking down at my watch and I was just like, it's midnight. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have a fun day tomorrow. And then we're cranking on toward 1 a.m. and I'm looking down at my watch and I was like, oh, this is gonna be even more fun than I thought. 2 a.m. rolls around, I'm finally hitting my bed and getting in bed. I have two choices today when I wake up and my team rolls in about an hour and a half, or two, it's about 2 hours from now, actually. Um, I can micromanage and sit there and say, I can do everything. I have that power and that ability, or I can sit there and go, you know what, guys, I know and I trust you. And I'm going to take care of myself right now because burnout is real. And it's very challenging when people want to have a team performing at a certain level and they're trying to carry it all themselves. How do you help people avoid like just absolutely crushing themselves with burnout?
mhm. Well, very tactical, better sleep, right? So
Right.
uh No, but if I think about burnout, like as in everything, you want to understand what's the root cause, right? And
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
think
yeah.
about burnout, it could be um, that structurally there are things that are making burnout something consistent for the team, right? So
Yeah,
maybe it's because the capacity of the team or the way they're structured and communicate, right? So I know, having worked in banking, that you have these matrices, right? Organize, or like huge matrix organizations where you have all these different business units, but they're all interrelated. So you could have a design that creates burnout, or you can have a smarter design in which you solve some of those things and things flow better, and it makes a huge difference on the team. So I think there's structure, but another could be scope, right? If today, in 2 hours, you say to the team, "Hey, we're gonna work on triple the output that we generally work on," it's gonna lead to burnout. Maybe not today, right? But if you continue with that
eventually.
and you don't adapt your systems or the capacity just because of the scope that you're taking, could have an impact, right? Um, and the other could be another could be mindset, right? And
Yeah,
and you said it. I love how you said it. Just taking care of yourself, right? So just
yeah,
um, because you could create a great systems, great structure. You take care of the scope, right? But if I'm an overperformer and I'm working extra long hours and I don't tell you as my leader, um, then there's all of those other conditions are great, but I'm driving myself to burnout just because of not taking care of myself or not having that mindset. So I think as when teams describe burnout, they could be talking about different things. They have different causes, and depending on what the root cause is, then it's like, oh, okay, let's fix the structure, or let's fix communication, or let's not take on more projects right now when the team is already at capacity, right? So it really depends on, like, there's different reasons for the burnout, and I think the critical thing is just finding out where it's coming from and solving it.
I love that. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were a younger person, what advice would you give yourself? And it doesn't have to be about leadership. It can be about anything in general.
Um, so I think it goes with one of the themes we discussed. So on the authenticity, I would
Mm,
say don't put so much importance on what others think of you.
I love that.
I think that just like I was at times, I was very concerned with kind of criticism and comparing myself to others or putting on masks, right? Oh, I'm in
Yeah,
this environment. This is how all the other people are behaving. I need to behave like that. Um, and I think that one, I should have, like, there are moments where I think back and I'm like, I could have been happier or could have enjoyed more if I was a little bit more authentic in that
yeah,
situation. Um, but some of these things, I think that if I look back, I may have done them with the intention of, okay, this will make me more successful in my career, in my relationships, etc. Um, and not being authentic was actually making me, you know, trip over and failing at things. So I think that would be one, to just like, hey, be authentic and don't put so much weight on what you hear, what others are saying.
I love that. Well, I wanted to ask you one last question here, and it's a question that I circle back on as a leader because we've talked about the good side about being a leader, but what happens when things get hard? And you have to try to keep the team motivated and positive when things get challenging. Last month, we had for my team in the beginning of the month, we had a dip in videos. We had 2 weeks where some of our clients that were supposed to get us videos, it didn't. They didn't come through, and they were behind on their filming schedule, and so we had 2 weeks where my team was sitting, and they were just like, "What do we do?" And what I did was I worked on training. I said, "This is a perfect opportunity to double down on our training, to double down on our, like, let's learn some extra techniques. We got some new tools that are coming out. Let's play around with those and see if we know how to use them." And inside, I'm stressed out, but I was able to keep my team performing, and team was focused, and they didn't, they were like, "Oh, this is great. I get to finally get time to learn this new tool, finally get time to learn this new technique." But that was something, and I was like, I was the one who just had to keep that smile on, like, it's okay. And it was okay. And then suddenly we got absolutely slammed with extra work the next weeks. And so it was like, but my team was rested, they had recovered, and they had prepped for what was coming. And so, it's not always easy though to handle those storms that come up, because they're not always easy, just relaxing times to kind of train. Sometimes the storms can be some problem or something went wrong with what you were designing.
Yeah. But I love that you kept the team safe, right? So,
Yeah.
so you acted as kind of a bumper there from maybe these challenges that you were seeing. So safety was, sounds like it was a big priority, and the team felt safe. Um, and then, great idea to just work, like either recover and say, hey, let's take some hours off because we know that more demand is going to come soon, or work on internal capabilities, right? So training, it could be a time of planning or working on systems. Hey, we have kind of messy systems. Let's clean them up a little bit now that we don't have that. Um, I do think that leadership is an art, so having one answer for everything doesn't work.
No.
And I think in
Right.
this topic that you're saying, it's I think the role of a leader is figuring out when to act as that barrier to protect the team, and when they need to um, let the team be exposed to some of that, right? Because in many cases, like in other cases, I could see a scenario in which you want that stress, you want that pressure, you want the team to have some visibility on that stress and pressure, right? And to
Yeah.
say, hey, you know, I'm keeping you safe. There's still these guardrails, but you need to see what's out there, right? And you need, like,
Yes.
let's say that increased competition, right? There's a lot of stress because of that. Or right now, I know that the uncertainty around AI, right? So,
Yeah.
so as a leader, sometimes you want to protect and say, "Hey, you're safe," and other times it's like, "Hey, I need to put, like, the only way you're going to learn and make better decisions is if I expose you to some of those risks, right? I'll still have your back, but I'm gonna, I need to expose you. I need to have you go through that learning, because that's where when we learn from those challenging situations. So I think it's definitely a difficult balance of figuring out
Yeah.
when to protect and when to allow that pressure to be visible to the team.
I love that. Well, I want to say this has been awesome. But where can people find out more information about you and look up the information that you're sharing and get inspired by your leadership
So
skills?
so right now, I think it's everything is on my LinkedIn. So I'm working on getting more social. But right now, my LinkedIn profile, so Hugo Breton, that's where I'm posting content. I'm trying to get some videos a couple times a week, and share some thoughts on leadership and management and making that leap so that we get better leaders in the future. So